Is hyaluronic acid the answer for site injection? Stay tuned. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever is on your mind, be it bodybuilding, be it non-bodybuilding, life, whatever is on your mind, it is on the table. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. So glad you could join us on this, the 15th day of January. We are going to go right into the questions. The first two questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. And the first two questions on this show seem to be along the lines of site enhancement. So the first question is, I've seen that hyaluronic acid has become quite popular as a site enhancement oil. Your opinions, does it work well?
Yeah, I think the key part of the question is as a site enhancement oil, and the problem is that hyaluronic acid is not an oil, it's water-based, and I think therein lies the problem. So while if you inject it into a body part, it might cause an inflammation to occur, an inflammatory response, it doesn't stay in the muscle. It's water. It basically just gets absorbed. It's gone in an hour or two, if it even lasts that long. Now, the inflammation might be there a little longer, but that's about it. And the problem is that you're not going to get any long-term muscle building from it. Whereas when you use these site injection oils, especially the ones that have technology in them, which a lot of them don't now, but some of them are just oils. But the ones that, I know the older ones with the painless pumps, the original ones, the Chris Clark one, had glycoproteins in there. And what you basically were doing was you were hyper feeding the muscle. So you were giving the volumizing from the oil, which stayed there for a week or two. And then you also, on top of that, got the hyper feeding of them to the muscle of those fatty acids and the glycoproteins in there, which is essentially protein, and you created a long-term muscle building effect in the muscle. So you got the volumization from the oil, you got the long-term muscle building. So the longer you use the product, the more muscle you built with it. You got temporary results from the oil expansion, giving that volumizing effect, and it stayed for a while. So people were getting both effects from that. Nowadays, I think there's some oil still on the market, but a lot of it's just oil. So you're getting a long-term volumizing effect rather than a long-term muscle building effect in addition to that volumizing effect. The problem with the hyaluronic is that it doesn't stay there, so you don't even get the long-term volumization effect. You just get a very short-term inflammatory response, which is good for guys that have great arms. You get a guy like Phil Heath and you do that, the right before a competition and his arms round right off, or Ronnie Coleman or something like that. And I'm not saying these guys use it. I'm just saying if you did it on a guy who had a very good arm, you would get that effect from it. But from a guy who's looking to enhance their arms, who maybe don't have great arms, that's not the product you want to use.
Second question, again, these first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. And again, the first two questions along the lines of site enhancement. The second one, no exception there. Can you do a synthol guide for quads specifically?
Yeah, if you guys, it's probably worth rehashing that video I did a couple of years ago, Sid, where I actually said, don't inject your quads. Never, ever, ever do it, because it doesn't matter if you've done it 100 times. On the 100th time you do it, you will get an infection. It will be brutal, and you will wish and curse the day you ever shot your quads. Don't shoot your quads. The quads are a very dense muscle. Okay. when you start pumping oil into them, invariably it gets trapped and you get an infection. It's very hard to get rid of the infection in the quads. I implore you, please don't inject your quads. Back in the day, we would inject the lower vastus lateralis, outer head of your quad, just a little bit. Sometimes we would put a half a cc in there before training legs, maybe just to give us a little mental, a little inflammatory response there. That's not. I'm not what I'm talking about. You cannot start pumping 2, 3, 4 cc's into your quads. If you do that, you will get an infection. And number one, they won't even look good. You don't put synthol or any kind of oil-based or large amounts of oil into a muscle that is long, because if you do that, you get lumps. And we see it on stage all the time. We saw it with guys like Big Ramy. It looked like he had lumps in his quad. Don't inject your quads. Trust me, you're not going to enhance them in any sort of an aesthetic way that's going to look good on stage. You're only going to get criticism from it. And you're going to risk getting a major infection as well. These 2 questions, by the way, were from the Dave Palumbo Experience app, and I want to thank everyone because we've gotten tremendous support over the years. I don't know if you guys know what it is. It's my app. You can download it in the Android store, from the iTunes store, and it's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket, all my writings, all my videos in one place. Plus, I answer everyone's questions in an open forum, so you see everyone's questions, everyone's answers. It's a really good learning experience. I do a question and answer video, just like Ask Dave. I do an extra one just for the app members every single week. So you get 4 of those a month. It never stops. We never take a break. We put up a workout every week. All my protocols are there in terms of drug protocols, off-season, pre-contest. Diets are there. It's a very, very great reference if you need it, and it's always expanding and growing so that you're learning as the app grows and expands as well, and as I learn. So I highly implore you to check it out. It's a great gift to buy for someone, and I appreciate your support.
Speaking of gifts, that shirt you're wearing is pretty sweet. Where is this from?
There's a bunch of guys that have. I just did a podcast with them too. I should probably put the link up for the podcast. They have a clinic here in Fort Myers, and this is their little
Nice.
thing. So
Nice.
thank you for that.
All right, there you have it. We take questions now from our Instagram, our YouTube community, all our social media platforms. This is a cool one. Now, again, depending on where you stand regarding AI, some people find it very cool, very intriguing. Others find it a little bit overreach and a little bit scary, especially when you think about future applications. But this question's about AI applications when it comes to bodybuilding. It's from Frank Rosano. I recently ran a simulation of the 1997 Mr. Olympia using ChatGPT. The AI had Shawn Ray winning, Nasser in a close second, and Dorian in third. Do you think AI has a place in bodybuilding judging since it is quote unquote objective?
No, I don't think so at all, because I don't think we have any clear standards that define what makes a bodybuilder the best that they are. I think it's what looks good aesthetically to your eye. And so I think humans, I don't think we're going to get AIs evaluating art better than a human could evaluate art, because it's an emotional response to the art, just like there's an emotional response to physiques. And AI doesn't get that emotional response. And so they can only assess things on technical details. And technically, while Shawn Ray might have the best balance, aesthetically, he doesn't have the emotional response you get from seeing the mass of Dorian or the mass of Nasser on stage. And I think that's something that you can't really program into a computer. So I don't think they'll ever replace humans in terms of judging goes. But it's an interesting exercise, because it's funny that now computers can actually start evaluating things, and that I worry about that, because I hope that the government doesn't start having computers evaluate job applications and stuff like that, because there's always a personal component that you want an actual human being to evaluate. Imagine going to court and having a computer decide what your fate is based on the evidence, without having any emotional any emotional responses from lawyers. And pretty soon we'll just be like, okay, boom, jail, and that's it. So that's a little bit scary to me with AI, but I think you have to have the human touch has to still be there, especially for judging.
Well, if you saw Westworld last season, right, where they were like in the future, and how everything that they were doing, I mean, they literally just, like what was it? Oh my God, who's the girl, the main actress, whatever, like that. She needed to
Yeah.
get an apartment, and literally she just said, like, get me an apartment, whatever. And like within 5 seconds, it was like finding open place, negotiating lease term, you're signing, pick up your keys, whatever, like that. I'm like, if that's where the future is headed, it's a pretty
that will happen for sure. That will
yes.
happen because that's a convenience. But I don't want anyone deciding my fate who's a computer. That's for sure.
No, but remember, it gets even more grim. Remember, like it started to assess people's value or whatever, like that, their future value. And you remember, like it assesses woman's value or something like that. And like all of a sudden, like the husband is like, "We are leaving you. We're taking the kids, whatever, like that."
Oh,
because it like foretold like a poor future for. I don't know, but that's probably where we're headed. But I don't think
Westworld
AI
was
is gonna
great.
judge
It got a
anybody.
little weird the last season. That's for sure.
But yes, I don't think I'm with you. I don't think AI is going to be judging bodybuilding shows anytime in the near future. Next question is more today, not the future. Is about creatine. What is fact about creatine and his words myth? Is it really bad for your kidneys or not? What is the link between creatine usage and kidney health, as you see it?
When you take a creatine product, a certain percentage of that can get converted to creatinine. Now, creatinine is also a waste product that we measure in the blood to determine how well your kidneys are filtering your blood. So if your creatinine is high, let's assume you're not on creatine. If your creatinine is high, over whatever, 1.35 or whatever they're determining now is the limit, then theoretically your kidneys are under stress or they're not clearing your blood, at adequate levels. Now, if you take creatine on top of that, creatine monohydrate, and a certain percentage converts to the waste product creatinine, it can artificially raise the creatinine in the blood, and you might think that your kidneys are not functioning, but it's just because you're taking the creatine product. The only time creatine seems to be dangerous to the kidneys would be if you're not hydrating properly. So you don't want to take creatine, say, while you're depleting water before a show. You would stop. That's why we always have guys stop it and women stop in 2 to 3, usually like 1 to 2 weeks before the show. They did some studies with wrestlers in high school who dehydrate to make weight, and they found that it could be very dangerous. Some of these guys had some kidney issues with taking creatine while they were, dehydrating and trying to starve themselves to make weight. So it's not a product you're not going to take without drinking. Now, to add to further insult, it doesn't work unless you're drinking. One of the effects of creatine is volumization of the muscle. So if you're not drinking fluids with it, you're dehydrated, you're not going to get any volumization of the muscles. It's not even worth taking at that point. So only take creatine when you're in a hydrated state. Don't use it. I usually have people stop it when they're dieting, but that's up to them. I usually only use it in the off season with my guys when I know they're in a hydrated state.
Let's go now to, let's take a question from our Instagram. This guy says that he's abandoned chicken altogether. Says he found it boring. He's from RPE, and I'm strictly eating red meat, flank, round, and ground. I noticed that I have a fuller look for longer, and I feel my strength has even increased on top of my gear usage. My question, even though chicken is very high in protein, do you see any nutritional disadvantages that I've abandoned in place of red meat altogether?
Red meat definitely does make you a little stronger and give you a full look. There's a lot more creatine, speaking about creatine, in red meat, and that could be one of the reasons why you get a more volumized effect when you eat more red meat. There's also more fat in red meat than in chicken. So sometimes I see a lot of bodybuilders get into this, they kind of fall into this little misstep where they're taking in very lean sources of protein. They're eating their carbs, but they're not eating enough fat in their diet. So then they find when they start eating red meat, they start growing better because now they've increased the fat. The problem with red meat is it's only saturated fat. So what you want to really make a concerted effort to do is take in enough of all the fats that your body needs. The monounsaturated fats coming from olive oil or macadamia nut oil or avocados. Your polyunsaturated fats coming from your nuts like almonds, and walnuts and cashews. Your saturated fats, obviously, from either red meat or egg yolks. So you want to really have a nice variety of different fats in the body. And if you find that you grow better on red meat, then it could be that you're just not eating enough fat in your diet, because chicken and red meat should be comparable, but the difference is a little bit more creatine in red meat, a lot more fat usually in red meat. So keep that in mind. there's nothing wrong with doing the red meat if you handle it, you digest it well. A lot of people sometimes get sick of eating a lot of red meat because it takes it longer to digest it. If that's the case with you, maybe just try substituting more avocados, more mac oil. I pour macadamia oil all over my food, so I boost my fat content up a lot. It makes me feel full. I recover better. It speeds my metabolism. And like I said, some people use nuts. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I eat a lot of whole eggs. You got to make sure you get enough fat, especially when you're trying to grow in the off season.
Let's take a question from our good friend Nico Cantemir. In your mass steroid cycle in your app, you use 200 equipoise EOD, which adds up to 800 in a week. Wouldn't it be better to use 2 compounds with less quantity? For example, 300 trenbolone enanthate and 300 masteron enanthate plus test, of course. Thank you.
The reason I stick with testosterone and one anabolic off season is I like to switch the compounds every 6 weeks. So, like, I'll do testosterone equipoise for 6 weeks, testosterone deca for 6 weeks, testosterone trenbolone and enanthate for 6 weeks, testosterone and maybe D-ball, or testosterone and master. If you keep switching them, what happens is testosterone never stops working because that's what our bodies naturally produce. But it seems like the anabolics have a certain way of latching onto the androgen receptor. And if you're constantly changing them, it seems like you keep making gains. You keep the gains coming better. Whereas if you just stay on the same 2 compounds all the time, you kind of stagnate after a while. So if you're taking multiple compounds, 3, 4 compounds in the off season at one time, what are you going to switch to? There's nothing to switch to. It's like you're used to them all. So in my estimation and from my own experience, I found that you grow just as well on 2 as you do on 3 compounds. You're better off using a little more of the 2. And then what happens is, after 6 weeks, switch. If you combine 2 compounds with the GH off season, your toxicity is going to be very low. Your appetite's going to be good, which is very important. Remember, if you can't eat, you can't grow. A lot of guys off season can't eat. They're on too many drugs that are toxic. They don't have an appetite, and then they don't grow. This way, it keeps the amount of drugs to a minimum. You're on long-acting injectables. It's easier to eat, and you switch those drugs up every 6 weeks, and you'll make the best gains. That's been my experience my whole life. Look, I've been doing this for over 30 years now. I know it works, and so I try to give people what works. If I thought there was a better way to do 3, 4 compounds, I would tell you, but it's really not. Pre-contest, different strategy, because pre-contest, you're not trying to grow, you're trying to maintain. So there's nothing wrong with using 3 or 4 compounds at a time before a show, because you're trying to maximize, how your body looks. You're not putting on muscle. So there's a different strategy, and eating is not as hard because you're starving all the time, right? So different strategy, off season versus pre-contest.
Question about T3, T4 is a follow-up question from last week. What role does T4 have? Is it only to convert to T3? You said that you take T4 seeing as you don't have a thyroid. Why not just take T3? Or is there a function of T4 other than just being converted to T3?
The reason why they don't give T3 for replacement right off the bat, some people do take T3, by the way, because they don't convert T4 to T3 adequately. But they're not going to give me T3, and I don't want to take T3 because I don't know how much my body needs exactly. It's a guessing game. If you take T4, invariably you're taking more than you probably need, a little bit more, and then your body only converts what it needs into T3. So it's like I'm giving my body the precursor, and then my body can then convert it into what it needs, and my body knows what my body needs. So rather than me play this guessing game of trying to guess how much T3 to take, which is the active thyroid hormone, I let my body determine how much T3 to make. I just give it the precursor T4, and I say, yeah, figure it out on your own. And that's a better way to be. Now, like I said, there are some people that are resistant, meaning that they have problems where that deiodinase enzyme that converts T4 to T3 doesn't work well in their body. So they could take a lot of T4, and they don't convert it to T3. Those people need to take the T3 directly, and that's why they actually make Cytobel T3. They make it for people who don't convert T4 to T3. That's not my situation, and it's not the situation of most people who don't have a thyroid. Most people don't have a thyroid, just don't produce T4 because they don't have a thyroid. So they give them the T4 and let their body then convert what it needs to T3. But the T4 itself doesn't do anything.
Couple questions that are right up your alley. One is about alkaline water and isolyze. So it's from Xanadu. Does mixing isolyze and alkaline water alter digestion of the shake?
No. Now, you see, the whole idea behind alkaline water, and I've talked about this ad infinitum in the past, is I love alkaline water, but you don't drink it. You don't drink it while you're eating like a protein meal, because when protein goes into the stomach, your body releases hydrochloric acid, which acidifies everything in the stomach. So you're neutralizing that alkaline water instantly in the stomach, because the stomach is dumping tons of hydrochloric acid in it to try to digest the protein. So you drink alkaline water between meals. Okay. So when you're not, like, if I'm just sitting around on the computer and I want to drink some water, I would drink alkaline water, not while I'm eating a meal. While I'm eating a meal, especially because most of my meals are going to be protein based, I would not drink alkaline water, because number one, it's not going to do anything bad. It's just not going to help me. It's just going to be instantly acidified. So it's a waste in a sense.
Let's go to another question that was right up your alley. It's about fiberlyze, but it's about anal fissures. Will fiberlyze assist at all with relieving the pain of anal fissures?
Well, anal fissures are like, basically that's exactly what they sound like. They're cracks in the anal wall there. Some people get it from hemorrhoids. Some people just have it, because of their weakened wall. Some people get it from when they get like colonoscopies. Obviously, anything that's going to help your waste leave your body effortlessly, where you don't have to strain, is going to be good for, letting those things heal. So yes, bulking up your stool and having a gel-like stuff come out of your body, rather than you having to sit there and strain and push something out, which is going to probably rip those anal fissures and make them worse, is not going to be good. So there's no negative to taking fiberlyze ever. It's only positives. Positive for hemorrhoids, positive for anal fissures, positive for good digestion and removal of waste effectively. There's no negative to it. Okay. The only people who maybe can't handle the fiberlyze would be someone who has a really, really bad case of ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, and they're pooping already too much. And so, in some cases it actually helps, but in some cases it's just too much for them. So, but other than that, in every other situation, it's going to be a benefit.
So this next MJ Taglianetti, he's asking about a longevity immune booster supplement that you were talking about. Do you remember which one he's talking about? Maybe you discussed it last week on the show.
Which one?
He's asking for the link to the website for this longevity immune booster supplement.
Not the Sloop one that we talked about. Was that Sloop?
No.
No.
I'm wondering if it's the one that you talked about that had like ivermectin in it. Was it?
Oh, the Power Purge one, with the one for the parasites?
I'm trying to think what other supplements you've recently discussed. I mean, there was that, and I mean,
I wouldn't call that an immune system. I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
So you know what? I'm gonna call him MJ Taglianetti. Hopefully, I'm correctly pronouncing your name next week, or at least just clarify in the comments exactly which supplement you're talking about, and we'll get you the link to that website.
Yes.
So you've been talking about stretching the last few years. Do you think flexibility is something a bodybuilder should work on, not from a muscle building standpoint, but so that you can get the full benefit of training and minimize injuries? Bodybuilding is already so demanding. How would you fit in stretching on top of the weights and cardio?
Well, personally, I stretch every night before bed. Like while I'm sitting in front of the TV, like maybe if I go to bed at, let's say, 12:30, 1 o'clock, by like 11:30, I'm on the floor, usually stretching out before my last meal. And I'm, trying to get, I'm usually doing mostly, lower body stretching type stuff. If I'm training legs, I always stretch before I train legs, just because I want to be able to have full depth when I'm doing leg presses or squats. Upper body, I stretch as I'm doing the muscle. So while I'm training chest, I'm leaning against things and I'm stretching my pecs out and stuff like that, or back, I'm leaning against something and stretching my lats out. And that's just how I do it. I mean, I don't specifically take times. I just do it when I'm training the body part. The only thing I stretch before the body part is legs. And then at night, like I said, I sit on the floor. That's just so I don't walk around like an old man. But so that's my regimen. One more question, Sid, because I got someone here who's got.
Yeah, no problem at all. TRT dose causing low DHEA. Is the negative health consequences of low DHEA real to consider jumping off?
Say that one more time. So TRT dose doing what?
It's causing low DHEA. It's the negative health consequences of low DHEA real to consider jumping off?
Well, no. I mean, if your testosterone is high, then you wouldn't worry about DHEA. I think that's just something that you shouldn't worry about. I think that. Hold on one second. All right, you can come in. Yeah, you're supposed to be at 12 o'clock. I'm recording something right now. Thank
We're
you.
going to do one more after this because it's about cheeseburgers. So we have to get
Yeah,
that
all
in.
right.
All right.
We
So
got
we'll take
the
that
cleaners
quick.
are here. All right,
Yeah,
hold
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Let
no
me get
problem.
so getting back to what I was saying.
Yeah. Low DHEA.
Oh, so DHEA is important if you're not on testosterone replacement because that's a hormone that's going to obviously control immune system regulation, metabolism. It's going to give you a little bit of a sex drive. It's most important in women because women don't produce testosterone. So women make their testosterone from DHEA. If you're a man, however, on testosterone replacement, okay, the DHEA levels are really irrelevant. Can you take replacement DHEA 50, 100 milligrams a day? Yeah, it's not going to probably make a difference. But if you're on testosterone replacement, I wouldn't worry about it.
Take one more question. As promised, this one is about burgers and specifically about eating burgers. I love cheeseburgers. I eat 6 meals a day, high fat, high protein, keto diet. What is the proper way of eating cheeseburgers every day while building muscle and staying lean? How do I go about eating 2 double cheeseburgers a day without being a fat ass and still building muscle? Have fun with
Well,
that.
if you're a fat ass, if you get to be a fat ass from eating cheeseburgers and fries every day, then you shouldn't be eating cheeseburgers and fries every day. I only give cheeseburgers and fries to the guys that have a very fast metabolism and have trouble growing. I have a lot of guys that are on regular programs with no junk food and they grow just fine and they have no problem gaining weight. And if I start putting too much junk in, as a matter of fact, they get sloppy and they look terrible. So it's not for everyone. It's for the gifted person who has that crazy metabolism that when they get into the off season, I can't physically feed them enough good food or clean food to get them to grow. So I start substituting the clean meals with a burger and fry meal. And a lot of time that kick starts their body and it gets them to start growing again. It happened to me and I have a lot of clients it works really well with, but it's not for everyone. It's not a one size fits all thing. So if you're a fat ass from eating that stuff, stop eating it. You're just going to make yourself look terrible. And it, like I said, it's not necessary for everyone. It's got to be used when necessary. And I think that's the most important point there.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. We have all new episodes right now of the After Hours podcast from yesterday, as well as Heavy Muscle Radio from Sunday night. Chris Aceto responding to Shawn Ray. Shawn Ray actually responded, I believe, yesterday on the Voice of Bodybuilding podcast. So maybe we'll have some continuation on it next Sunday, or this upcoming Sunday, rather, on Heavy Muscle Radio. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe, notification, like, comment, and as always, we appreciate all of your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.